a ghost that moves stuff around. I'm not scared of that. The 2015 version of Poltergeist is directed by Gil Kenan, written by David Lindsay-Abaire. It's based, of course, on the classic 1982 film, allegedly directed by Tobe Hooper, but probably directed by Steven Spielberg, and this movie stars Sam Rockwell, Rosemary DeWitt, Kyle Catlett, and Jared Harris. Now, Poltergeist is one of the OG haunting movies, and the plot is pretty much what you've seen like a million times before. A family moves to this new house that was somehow like built on like some sort of ancient burial ground or something, and bad stuff starts to happen to them, but there's like a technological twist in there. Now, just to clarify where I'm coming from when I review this movie, I've never seen the original Poltergeist. Please don't kill me. I really do want to see it, but you know, by the time I watched this movie, I had not seen it. So yeah, and through that lens, I guess I can say that there were a couple of good moments throughout Poltergeist, but overall it just wasn't scary to me, and it ultimately was kind of boring. Now, first of all, major gripe with how much CGI is in this movie. It's ridiculous. There's so much visual effects used for the scares when I think the same scenes could have been pulled off better and scarier with practical effects and real objects. And the only real scene I remember from the original Poltergeist is the scene where the chairs suddenly stack themselves. And for me, like, watch that scene and watch how they try to replicate it in this movie with a House of Cards. It works in the original movie because it's so subtle, you know, like the wife just kind of walks in the frame and suddenly the chairs are stacked up. There's no like loud noise or anything. It's subtle, it's creepy. But the way they try to do that in this movie, like the House of Cards just gets blown by wind and like it makes like a loud sound and the cards fly at the screen, and it's just so overdone, and that's really kind of evident throughout this movie. They overdo everything. And it's not chilling at all. So the movie ultimately isn't scary at all because nothing feels believable. Everything looks fake and computerized. So really the sense of urgency is lost, you know? You don't really feel like these things could hurt these people, in my opinion at least. And what's up with the design of these spirits? I mean, I know they're supposed to be like spirits of angry human beings, but they look and sound more like ghouls than they do humans, which for me is actually less scary. It would be creepier if you could hear them talking, or they would look kind of human, but they just kind of look like imps here, which is eh. And I think there's something off about the pacing of this movie. It feels like the movie starts too abruptly in the sense that it doesn't feel like it has complete or proper build-up. And the scenes that follow really just kind of don't feel like they progress anything. It just feels like they're throwing in a bunch of random scenes in there to kind of, you know, give you more scares, but none of them are actually scary. And there's so many unnecessary jump scare scenes throughout the movie, as well as just these hallucination sequences, which were infuriating because they were the most promising in terms of being scary, but then at the end they take it back. Never happened, which is just ridiculous. I don't know why people still do that. And in terms of acting, I think the two kids here, Kyle Catlett and Kennedy Clements, there's a lot of screen time dedicated to them as like the main focus, and for me they really just can't convey fear well enough to be able to carry these scenes. Now, I'm not gonna complain that much about the plot of this movie because it's not necessarily bad, it's just conventional, and to me that's not a bad thing. However, I will complain about how underdeveloped the family is here, the Bowens. They don't actually feel like a real family to me, in the sense that, yeah, you see these guys hang out and interact with each other, but you know, it doesn't feel like they love each other. I mean, in the sense that, you know the dynamic of like a family on screen. They have sometimes playful banter with each other. There's obviously like a hierarchy in there, but here it just kind of feels like there are a bunch of actors in the room together. So I really couldn't care what happened to them because I didn't really care about the characters. They weren't really fleshed out well enough. And most of the dialogue in this movie is very exposition heavy as well. And there's this weird thing about the tone of the movie, which for me, near the end, it becomes a bit too humorous. Like, it starts to not take itself too seriously by the ending, even if it took itself super seriously at the beginning, which kind of reduces the stakes for me. But there were things I did like about this movie. For one, Sam Rockwell is in it, and he's always going to be the best part of any movie he's in. He's just severely overqualified, you can tell. Like, he's just so good at showing off depth of emotion. You know, his character is this dad who's trying to put up a front and be like a cool dad, but he has a lot of regret and pain deep inside him, and he pulled that off really well. But he just feels so out of place in this movie because the rest of the movie can't keep up with him. Rosemary DeWitt, who plays his wife, is also really good, and they have great chemistry together. And Gil Kenan as a director doesn't really do a spectacular job, but he manages to pull off certain scenes in inventive ways. Whether or not they're copying from the original, they're still well done. And while I did mention that the tone is kind of off, for me, that the humor that is there does actually kind of work in a good-natured way. It's still totally watchable. But in the end, I would still say that Poltergeist isn't really a good movie. It's kind of mediocre. It could be fun if you've never seen the original, which is, I guess, what happened to me. It's still perfectly watchable, but don't expect anything special. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Poltergeist. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.